Hello, everybody, and welcome to this, the Legends podcast with me, Sarah Faruya from Sarah Faruya Coaching. Today, I have the most amazing guest with me who I've been wanting to interview for so long, and it is the terrific Tokyo hottie, Tiffany Rossdale. Hi, Tiffany.
Hi, Sarah. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so looking forward to this interview.
Me too. I can't wait, and I'm just so excited to have
Yeah,
you here.
but
You go ahead.
first and foremost, I would like to
Uh-huh.
say I just would like to say that I'm so grateful to be on your show, and I have been listening to your podcast episodes.
Oh my God.
Yeah, and you have so many amazing influential guests on your show
Yeah.
who has been sharing their wonderful stories and wisdoms. So thank you for using your platform to educate us and inspiring us all. So I'm really honored to be a part of your show.
Oh, that's such a lovely thing to say, Tiffany. And the same for you as well. I love your podcast too. I've learned so much about so many things from listening to it. Such an important topic um, that you focus on there. So I'm absolutely delighted. So I want to just give you a formal introduction before we get into the questions, which is where I really like to go. So Tiffany is, she's your Tokyo-based transformational lifestyle coach now, and she was born and raised in Manila in the Philippines. She's been a resident of Tokyo for over 25 years now, having moved to Tokyo in the late 90s. She discovered vibrant opportunities with Japan's VIP nightlife scenes and became one of Tokyo's mega socialites. She had a brand called Tokyo Fashionista. She was curating her own events and has spent a decade hosting and designing some of the most luxurious parties for five-star hotels, luxury brands, mega clubs, and Halloween events, New Year's parties, and served as a judge at the International Pole Dance Fitness Competition.
That
How
was way
fun!
back.
Wowie! And worked with international artists and musicians like Kat DeLuna, Peter Chambers, and Lavelle Smith Jr., who was the choreographer to American pop stars like Michael Jackson, Janet Jackson, Beyonce, and many more. 10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, she started her career as a DJ, and I've been very lucky to have been at some of her parties and love dancing with her. And loads and loads of parties around the place. Agehara is one of the mega clubs here in Tokyo that she's featured at. And since the global pandemic struck, she's pivoted to hosting a podcast called The Breakfast with Tiffany Show, dedicated to LGBTQ plus well-being and community. I highly recommend her podcast. There's a lot to learn. She has some terrific guests on there, even some superstars as well. And so I know Tiffany. I don't know how I know you. I think I knew who you were through Brad and Kike, who are a married couple who ran a fantastic dance studio in Roppongi called
Fab
Fab,
Academy. Yes,
Fab
Fab
Academy.
Academy
And
Tokyo.
out there on the internet somewhere is a video of me in underwear doing a burlesque dance with them, which was just such terrific fun. Yeah. And then I think we met through maybe Aya Jean in the end. Yeah. And I met you. I was hosting workshops with her, and you also did you were one of her leaders in her workshops as well. And then since then we've just kept in touch, and our circles kept crossing. Few Japan, I think you were DJing at the party there, and now you're on the board of directors of Few Japan as well, right? Which is just
Yes.
amazing for empowering women in Japan, which is a professional networking organization. And you recently hosted me on the 40th birthday party, because I used to be the president of that fantastic organization as well. So Tiffany, welcome. I hope you feel like a rock star, because you are a total rock star.
Sarah, thank you so much for that amazing introduction. Like, I've never had that introduction before, so I'm really grateful.
Yeah, I mean, I could go on, there's so much, but I'm more interested in listening to you. So the first question I have for all my guests is, could you share a story from either fiction or from your own life that has influenced you in some way?
So, uh, yeah, thank you for that wonderful question. Like what you said, I was born and raised in the Philippines, and um, I am a transgender woman of experience, and my transition began when I moved here in Japan. So I want to tell this one story that when I was growing up, since my early childhood. So, I experienced many struggles when I was really young, and my gender identity, with my broken family, with my relationships with my relatives,
Mhm.
and all the other childhood traumas that I've had. And I actually want to share this one childhood memories of mine, which I haven't shared with anyone. So I was about 5, 6 years old, and my parents are still together. Um, there's this one guy who stayed with our family, and I can barely remember all the details, and I still didn't have that um this conversations with my parents when this happened ever since. So I am not sure if he was my parents' friend or some relatives. But my memory was he invited me to go to the bathroom. Every time he wants to go to the bathroom, he would invite me. And I think he was about late 20s, or probably in his 30s. I just don't remember. And every time he goes to the bathroom, he would invite me. He would invite me to go to the bathroom with him. And what he did, based from my memories, is he would let me touch his private part.
Mm,
And I don't remember if he did ejaculated, or all I remember was I get this strange feeling coming from all over my body.
mm,
I was trying to figure out what was it. So
mm.
that strange feeling was um every time I touch him, like I feel like that strange feeling. So um this happened quite several times.
Mm,
And that he could, every time like he would go to bathroom, he would call me and he wants me to join him. And I never told my parents, because maybe he didn't want me to let them know. I think he kind of warned me like back then.
mm.
And um I don't really remember most of what happened that time, and that's all I can remember. Maybe he did this. Maybe I think, you know what, like he did some more. I wasn't sure if um it's because I'm an innocent child, thinking when I became an adult that I could have been that it could have been a child abuse, or or he probably molested me, or what he did to me, right? And I also think that let him do whatever. I let him do whatever he wanted to do because he probably saw and knew that I was different.
Right.
And yeah, and I feel like he can see me. While my parents and my other relatives knew the fact that I was different and acting not like a normal boy, but they wouldn't accept and tolerate my uniqueness. So there was a lot of, like, you shouldn't do this and you shouldn't do that. So I think that person, that man who invites me in the bathroom, took that opportunity to show me that he can really see me, and also show me, yeah, like show me his private part and what I should have and play with. So yeah, that was one story that I can probably share that really, when I look back, it was strange, it was weird, but it opened my eyes in so many different things.
It's really interesting. Oh, thank you for sharing that story with us. And I don't know, I'm sorry that happened to you,
Mm.
but you also mentioned there that it kind of opened your eyes in many ways. What do you mean by that? If you don't mind my asking, Tiffany, you don't have to answer any of this.
Mm, 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 mm. It really obviously I've worked on my healing
Mm,
of all my past experiences in life, and it took me many many years to completely heal, and now I can finally tell all these stories, because back then I just kept everything within me, and I thought like no one should know about this, and I wasn't really vulnerable about my stories about what happened to me. So I think that particular event happened to me because it taught me so many things in life that I am now facing, to be strong and to be look after myself, and to to really be vulnerable. Who knows, like one day I'll be like this vulnerable and sharing all these stories, right?
Mm. Yeah.
And I believe I was lucky because that particular person didn't really, it didn't came to the point that, like in a rape or killing, because in the Philippines it's normal to have that kind of incident too. So I was still lucky to have just that, that not really that I'm still here, I'm alive,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. You mentioned there that it's quite common in the Philippines. What is quite common in the Philippines?
In the Philippines, it's common to have rape. It's common to have
Oh.
child abuse. It's common to have all these things, and um, that's why I love living here in Japan because I think Japan for me is a safe place.
Mm,
I've been safe here, being my gender identity, being who I am, and not really thinking about my safety.
mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah, because there are a lot of issues, aren't there, worldwide? Any country for people who have transgender uh, identities, all kinds of different identities. There's a lot of risk, isn't there? Much extra risk all the time. We're thinking about and seeing in the news that people have been murdered or beaten up and so on. And I think you just did a tribute podcast to one of your friends, didn't you? Would you like to mention them?
Yes, please. Thank you for this opportunity to that. It was my recent podcast about the transgender day of remembrance. It
Right.
was I'm not sure when this is going to be posted, but it was that this particular event happens every November,
Mm-hmm.
where we share about um the people that passed away during like uh all these trans people who have lost their lives.
Yeah.
And this one person, not just one, I have a few actually friends who is trans also, who who lost their lives without really knowing what was the real cause of the death.
Mm.
And it wasn't talked about in my community. And the trans women, oh, the Filipino trans woman community in Japan is not really big, so everyone knows everyone. And the fact that they passed away, no one really have the voice to talk about what really happened or question what really went through. And I was really lucky to have met my friend's family,
Mm.
the one who passed away in the Philippines. And they were, I remember when I met, I think it was the mom when I met, she was really, of course, devastated, but she was also trying to figure out what was the cause. And I couldn't say anything, even though I live in Japan, because it happened in Japan, right?
Oh.
And I don't know what to say because I don't know what really happened. The When the one of my trans friend who's really close to her, when she passed away, she told me that they just found her out that she was already dead. And how do you say it, like you couldn't really recognize her
Right.
anymore.
Her body had started to decompose.
It's Yeah,
Yeah,
it's already decomposed.
I see.
And I think the police here or the FBI, whatever here, like they didn't have that, they didn't want to, I don't know what really happened, like how they did not like figure out like what was the real thing that happened. But I remember like when her mom told me that they got the ashes back from here to from Japan to send it back to the Philippines. But yeah, like it was I really want to make that tribute on my podcast because she was a very good friend, and she was one of my inspiration when before I made my complete transition.
Mm.
And I idolized her. She was so beautiful, and she was so intelligent, and she was so out there. It there wasn't word for advocate back then. She was just like
Oh.
there, like showing up and being proud as a trans woman. And I saw that, I was like, wow, like, I want to be like her when, someday. And then I became friends with her when I came to Japan. And and we hang out here and there, and she was really nice. She was really an amazing kind person, and it was just like sudden, like when she passed away, and I was of course devastated. And yeah, that's the story that I shared on my recent podcast about her.
Beautiful. What's her name?
Leah Moreno. That's her stage name, Leah Moreno. We call her Leah.
Leah Moreno. Well, we'll dedicate this episode with your permission to Leah. Is that
Yeah.
okay?
Yes, of course. Thank you so much,
Thank
Sarah.
you. And and God rest her.
Mhm.
Um, so yeah, you just mentioned that. I completely failed to mention that you're transgender, but as I said to you at the beginning, that's the least, to me, that's not the most interesting part of thing about you. And I want to hear all your stories anyway. So that's amazing. And please, and the other thing, Tiffany, is if I use any out of date terminology or say anything that's upsetting or incorrect, please do just correct me on the spot, because I think it's really great for the people who are listening to understand terminology and stuff as well. Is that
I really,
okay?
yes, of course. I really
So,
appreciate that, Sarah. And I think it's really important to educate people about LGBTQ community.
yeah, to be sure. And I mean, you're not here as an educator, you're here as my guest, so that I don't want to put that on you. That's something that people can pay you for, of course. But and I just want to be really clear, if I make a mistake, please just call me out in the moment. I would love that, if you don't mind.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so well, let's go back then. Let's go back in time to the Philippines now and change gears a little bit.
Mhm.
And why don't you tell me about your childhood and your upbringing, and what's your background and story?
So as I have said earlier, like my background, when I was in my background when I was uh, in during my childhood was really rough. I didn't
Oh,
have that happy moments when I was really young, starting from that 5, 6 years old, because after that incident of what happened, that story I just said earlier, I also experienced my parents like separating.
mm-hmm,
They weren't officially married, but yeah, they officially, I mean, they separated when I was about 7 years old, and my mom leaving us to go here in Japan. And my dad couldn't really support us because his job of being a security guard couldn't really afford of me and my two other siblings, my brother and my sister. So he couldn't really support us. So my mom has to ask my relatives to take care of us while she was away. And I I didn't have that we didn't have that me and my sibling didn't have that freedom of being a child, like playing around, like going with other kids, because we were taught that we should always be cleaning the house, helping the house. And I remembered when I was still in elementary, like 7, 8, 9, my mom bought a big land in the she has a lot of properties in the Philippines, but like she bought one land near in Manila, where she wants to build a really nice house, and that house wasn't really completely built. So what we did um, is me and my relatives who's taking care of us were the ones who try to build like everything from, for example, like the gates and all that, right? While
yeah,
my mom is actually sending money for constructions to do it.
mm-hmm,
While they don't want to spend it, my relatives don't want to spend it because they wanted to spend it on, I don't know, like, so they're using the money of my mom by not like using it like were they supposed to use. So instead, like we're the ones like making it.
uh-huh,
We're building the house, we're cleaning the house, even though we have my mom sending money to have maids. They didn't even want to have maid. Instead, like they told my mom like, oh, we can just take care of them and they don't even need maids. So but then it ended up like we are the maid. We became the maids. Like we're the
okay,
ones cleaning the house. We're the ones like doing all of it. And I remember back then I thought like, is this normal? And then because my mom always put us in private schools, and I'm hearing all these stories from my other classmates that they're like living a good life, right? You're
mm,
hearing them like they can play, they can do whatever they want, they can like do like I remember like they love playing like those Game Boys, I think,
Yeah,
back
yeah,
in the
yeah.
90s, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, Game Boys and all that. But like, while we can also, we want to have it, but we couldn't have it because my my relatives, my aunts and my uncles, they didn't want to tolerate us for, to play and like do this thing. They just want us to study and then like do some, like stuffs at the house, clean the house, like build something for the house. So I've had that really rough childhood, dealing with that, at the same time dealing with my gender identity
Yeah.
at the same time. So the only escape that I had is when every time my father would visit us, and I would just like tell him everything, like, because he would take me out. I'm the one who's always taken out by my dad because um he couldn't take us all. So what
Mm.
he would do, like, he would ask permissions to my aunts and uncles to take me out for a little bit, for like, to go like some restaurant, some like some parks or whatever. And then he would, and then once we escaped, like, I would just like tear up and tell everything, all the stories that we were experiencing. And he couldn't do anything because he can't get us, because he can't also provide that support for us. And I also remembered like escaping so many times and trying to figure out where he lives, and also where I can find him at a
Mm.
very young age, and strolling around Manila. Like how it's really dangerous to go around
Whoa.
Manila, like
Yes.
at a very young age. Um and then I figure out, like, I next time he would visit us, I need his address and phone number, and then I would just like figure it out myself. Once I get that, like, feeling of I needed to escape, then I would just go and visit him, like, and escape the house. And then I would just tell him, like, just get my brother and my brother and sister, and we don't want to be there anymore. And my mom, one time, um she every time, like, we every time I escape, every time I try to escape, or I don't want to go back anymore, my mom would come back from Japan.
Mm.
And I think back in the days, the traveling is so expensive to travel, to go from Japan to the Philippines, right? It's not like that cheap. So she would always be like, what's wrong? Like, why would you, like, and we couldn't tell her, because every time she's coming back or wanted to talk to us, her sister or brother, or like the relatives, my aunts and uncles, are all around, and we couldn't tell her like the real what's happening.
Yeah.
So we were just like scared, like, to tell everything. And um and that's how she came at one point, that she was like, okay, if you want to just live with your dad, like, go ahead. I'm not going to support you anymore. We're not going to support you anymore. And then we're just go if you want. And then I had a conversation with my dad about, it doesn't matter where we can live. It doesn't matter if it's a poor area, or a, like a really or even if if we can just like go to a public school, we don't mind, as long as we can just like be with you. And he agreed to that terms, and he took care of us, and we really live in a really poor area in Manila. I've experienced that too for 5 years, because
Okay.
I was in high school when I experienced it. But the feeling of living with him, and the freedom of being, imagine I was already in high school, and I'm still playing, because I didn't have that, when I was at a very
Right.
young age, I couldn't play.
Yeah.
So I was still playing, like, some toys, or like whatever, like, at home, like, because I missed that time when I was supposed to be playing when I was really young.
Mm.
But my dad completely understand it. He would never judge, like, what happened to us, because he knew.
Mm.
So having him around, like, um was really uh comforting, and very, I think, necessary for us. And I actually graduated from high school, finding my peers, like, hanging around and figuring out while I'm still in the process of figuring out my real gender identity, though. But I was lucky to be able to find my peers in school, where I can hang out and be myself. So that was my story when I was in the Philippines before
Wow.
I moved to Japan.
Wow, what a story. That's such an incredible story. And I just think like it's so interesting you talking about your family there. And the word that came up for me was like resourceful, how resourceful they were, taking the money, but then building things themselves and all that kind of stuff. But at the same time, I was also thinking, and you spoke to this as well, that like you must have had to have grown up very quickly and very and kind of, and you actually just spoke to that then. So you're talking about even when you were a bit older, maybe in your teens, you were still playing with toys and stuff like that because you were expected to grow up so quickly when you were younger. So that's interesting as well. You should have picked up on that. You've had some therapy, is that right?
I I I did it on my own in the
You
beginning,
did it
but
on
I
your own.
in the
Okay.
beginning, yeah.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Because like, you know, these are the kind of things that you kind of work out in therapy, or now you're a coach as well. And coaching can sometimes, you know, help us to untangle these stories. But I'm not one to try and take a negative and turn it into a positive. I think that's really it's not very useful sometimes. But what do you think are the qualities that you took away from all of what do you, how has it made you who you are now, or how do you think those things helped you now? And I don't like to think of like child abuse as being something that's I'm I don't want to make it positive, if that makes sense, but I'm just interested to know what you think what qualities it's given you, that upbringing.
Mm. Yeah. Thank you for this question. I think it's also important um to let this out because for me, I believe that having that experience in my life at a very young age, I believe all that happened to me because um if I didn't have that, I wouldn't probably be that strong when I became an
Right.
adult, facing all the consequences of being a transgender, of finding who really I was, and all these relationships from my past, and also dealing with my families. I mean, I'm in good terms with my mom and my dad, but still, I didn't have that conversation with them about why did you do that? Like, why did you do, why did you do that? Why you left us? Why you know? There was so many questions, but for me, when I did the transition of healing myself, I I it was all about the forgiveness. I worked on forgiveness, and I think forgiveness is the ability to move beyond the bad experiences that I've had, knowing that the memory of the experiences gives me the strength and clear passage towards for positive change.
I just find you one of the most positive and sweet people. And when I say sweet, you mentioned like you were like this innocent wee boy who was, you know, probably, were you quite effeminate when you were little as well? Yeah, yeah. And I just find this sweetness about you, but you tell these stories without any shame, but also very authentically. And but I just find you to be such a positive and glowing person. You have this gorgeous radiance about you, and it's not fake, and it's not forced. It's just who you are. And I really appreciate that. And it's so interesting to hear these stories of your past as well. And because we all hold stories and we all have pasts, and it's just, I feel very honored and with your generosity of sharing these stories. And I also wanted to say, like, although you know, you mentioned your dad couldn't afford to keep you at first after your mum came to Japan. He sounds like a good guy. Is he a good guy, your dad?
My dad, he I think the love that my mom, because my mom wasn't there, right? Because
Yeah.
that love I think was filled by my dad, even though he couldn't support us in financial way.
Yeah. And also the importance of family as well. Those networked families, and yeah, how they stepped in and looked after you, maybe not in the best way, but here we are now, we come here. So I'm really interested in finding out, like, why did your mum come to Japan? But before that, I just wanted to mention, so you talked about forgiveness there, and I asked you before we came on the call if you didn't mind me mentioning about, like, I know you go to church, because I bumped into you on the train once, and we were near the Catholic University here. Is it called Sophia University, that one in
Yes.
yeah, so
Yes.
and I was like, oh hi, and you said, I'm on my way to church, and I was like, oh right, okay, interesting. So what do you take from church? Can you tell me a little bit about your faith, and does that help you to forgive? I'm interested.
Yes, it's definitely did. Thank you for that question. And
Yeah,
yeah, that time I didn't even, that coincidentally happened that I bumped into you
yeah,
on my way to go to church. And ever since I was a child, I was taught to, in the Philippines, we're very Catholic
yes,
people.
yes,
And my mom's dad and my mom's dad and my grandparents, they were really very religious.
yeah,
And we were taught that every time we did something wrong or we did something not good, he would punish us, like especially my grandpa, because he was he was living during the World War,
oh
and
yeah,
he has that, very strict and um super strict, like to us. And I remembered when every time I do something, just even like a little thing that I did wrong, like he would punish us, but it's like go on the in front of the altar and kneel down and like stay there for an hour and until until you ask forgiveness, like you have to be there. And we were taught that um that's how important to have that, have that uh um how do you say, like being religious.
mm,
And and then when I went to school, um I've been participating to some communities where um about Catholic, about being a Christian Catholic. And I was also part of a choir, which I love, because every time I go to church, I feel like I am in a safe space. I feel like no one will judge me if I'm in the church. Like I would just be there and like sing, like sing happy songs, being positive. So I've had that ever like since I was a very young age, and I still have that. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I came here in Japan. I've had that faith that um there's this one big church in the Philippines which is really famous for when you go and they say that when you go I don't know which day was it. If you go like 9 Wednesday, for example, 9 Wednesdays every week, and then on your last day you make a wish, it will come true.
mm,
And I did it. I did went to that church for 9 consecutive weeks, and I didn't and it put me into so much situations. Like for example, there was typhoon hitting, and I still went. And I like all the situations that really tried me if I'm not going to be able to do it or not. And I dedicated to do it because I really want to come to Japan. And I thought um putting that faith to God, that putting me in the right place at the same time will help me. And after and this is like so um quite bizarre for me. But then it was really after that last nine 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 the ninth week,
yeah.
when I made a wish, the following week my mom called me, and she told me that I got the visa.
Oh,
And I was like, it's really true. And that also was taught by my dad. My dad told me that you should be faithful with God, and you should he told me about this. He was the one who told me about, like, to go every one time every week, that you should go and just like offer like that time to God and just pray and visit the church, and it will change. If you have a wish, and it will be granted. And it happened. I believe in that. And I just, that's why I still have it, even though I'm here in Japan. And now also my how do you say, my religious, I am Catholic, but I also also pay respect to the Buddhism and Hinduism in Japan. Every time I see a shrine or a temple, I would visit and bow, and I'm still trying to learn more things about Buddhism and Hinduism because I think it's really fascinating for me.
Mm.
But paying a respect to a country where it welcomed me, and having me live there for 25 years, I think it's really important to pay the respect to.
Oh, it's so beautiful. I have a very random question. How many languages do you speak?
I speak three languages:
Yeah.
Tagalog, which is the Filipino mother language, um, English, and Japanese. But in the Philippines, by the way, we use some Spanish terms. So I know some, like very some, like words in Spanish.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Great. And yes, you're completely fluent in Japanese as well, right?
I am, yeah. I've been here for, yeah, for that long. I should speak the
Yeah.
language.
Um, so your mum, why did your mum come to Japan?
My mom came to Japan because I didn't you know what, I didn't ask her that question, but she, every time, like, she wants to say something about, like, from the past, why your dad is like this, why we kind of like separated, like, she always blames my dad, everything, even up
Okay.
until now, all in my dad. But then I believe she moved here because she wants to have that good life. She wants to provide that good life for me and my brothers and sisters, not just for us, but also for her family.
Mm-hmm.
So she was, I think she was the breadwinner of the
Yes.
seven, I think six, seven siblings,
Wow.
this big family. And I think that's how she wanted to be here, and like, earn that privilege of having that good life.
Yeah. Because
Mm.
um, yeah, because it's what you get paid here is a lot more than what you would get paid in the Philippines. Is that right? There's loads and loads and loads of amazing Filipino women come to Japan, don't they, and work here and send money home and support their families from here. It's an interesting system, that, isn't it?
Yes, it is. It is so true. That's why there's so many Filipinos come here to work. And back in the days, I believe there's a lot of Filipino people come here for as an entertainer. Either they're
Okay.
dancers, or singers, or being a hostess. So, like, those are the they get that visa to come here and live for like 6 months or a year. And then when they get requested by the bars, or by the clubs, they would come back again and have that visa again.
I see.
Mm.
When did you start realizing that you were a girl? Was it really early on?
Really early.
Yeah.
I think it was during when I was 5, 6 years old, and that's the time when that when I shared that story about that guy. I think he probably saw me like acting like really different,
Yeah.
and I've been playing. I mean, I've been moving like very feminine, and but then my parents didn't wanted to tolerate me, so they always say, like, don't act like that, don't do
Yeah.
like that. So
All right. So next then, what's the next part of your story? So you come to Japan. How old were you when you came to Japan, in your teens?
yes, I came here when I was 18,
Yes.
and that was during my second year college.
Yeah.
I was in college in the Philippines, and
What
my
were you
mom
studying?
I was studying business administration.
Okay.
Yeah, and
Ah,
my mom told me that I should come here and visit and see if I would love to be in Japan. And I didn't have that um, interest uh, back then. I thought, I don't know nothing about Japan. Only my mom is in Japan. That's the only thing that I have in my mind. And I was I really wanted to go to America. My dream is to go to America, and
yeah.
because everything we see on TV and cable are from America. to be in Hollywood, to be in, like to see New York, to see LA.
Yeah.
um that was really my dream, to be in America. So my tactic was to probably stay in Japan first and then go to America, because it will be easier for me, because from going from the Philippines to go to America, it wouldn't be that easy unless you have someone there that will support your visa.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought like living in Japan, because Japan is also a first world country, then it will give me an opportunity to go to America, which actually did.
Mhm.
And yeah, like I came here when I was 18 and I never went back.
18. And when you came over here, were you still living as a boy at that time?
I was, but I was different already. You would call it like a gay, or like I'm already, my mom already, my hair was a little bit longer than not short, that short.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not dressing as a male. I'm dressing more like a unisex kind of way.
Yeah.
And I remember my mom was telling me, you are going to live with me and your stepdad. So don't act like what you're acting in the Philippines. So act like, like a normal boy.
Mm-hmm.
And I did live with them for a year, and I couldn't even stay long because I don't have that freedom.
Yeah. Yeah. And you wanted to start to be yourself more.
Hmm.
So what age did you start to transition then?
I was 19, 20.
Yeah.
I already start taking hormone pills in the Philippines,
Mm-hmm.
but the complete transition happened when I was here,
Mm-hmm.
and after being a part of the community where all the trans women works. A lot of them, they work as a hostess here, a dancer, singer, and I was influenced to do cosmetic surgeries and to start like, like you should start thinking about your breast implants and save money. And I actually did save my money. I
Yeah.
didn't I didn't ask my parents to support me for that. Like I have my own money. I earn my own money to do my transition. And
Yeah.
I really worked hard for it
Yeah, for sure. You worked in a factory, didn't you?
in the
At
beginning.
first.
Yeah, in the beginning I did
Yeah.
work in the factory because my mom told me that all the Filipinos should are working in the factory, so that's the job here. So you don't have any other option to do. And then I was just like, really? And then I remember at that time the factory that I was working was in an electronic shop, and I was touching all these chips, and I always get grounded from those chips, and I didn't like that job. And I was just like, I really want to see like where those trans women work, and I know that they're here, but I just don't know where they are. I couldn't find them. I don't know where to find them. But my mom is a part of the community, of the Filipino community, and she knows, and she didn't want to tell me, because
Mm-hmm.
she didn't want me to be a part of it, because if I start to know all of it, eventually I'll change myself too, right? So,
Yeah.
and she didn't want to make that happen because of my stepdad. And then when I finally told her that I really want to do it and I really want to be in that community, just let me go, just let me do it. And she really thought about it, and she just told me, okay, you just have to have your own separate place, an apartment, then you can, you can you can do whatever you want. Unless like whenever you visit us, you still have to be yourself. So
Okay. But how long did it take her to accept you as Tiffany?
it took a while
Did it?
because uh, when I started doing my transition, I started from putting by going to have my breast implants, which she was so against. She was like, "Why would you do it?" Like, she was really against it, and I told her like I really want to, because all the girls that I see, and that's how they get the tips. Like they earn a lot of tips by having like good boob jobs.
Yeah.
and and then like she couldn't do anything. I was just like, I'm gonna go back to the Philippines and do my, because in Japan there were probably several cosmetic surgeons were doing it, but it was so expensive. So I thought the fastest way is to earn just some money and then like go back to the Philippines and do, a quick, cheaper um breast implants. And that's what I did in and the first transition that I did before I did my other complete transition of doing the SRS, the complete surgery, um, in Thailand, several years later.
Cool. Cool. There's a couple of things I want to note here. The first is, and this comes up a lot in my interviews with people, is the importance of mentors and having people around you who give you access to the things that you need. I think that mentors and senpai are so important. And so you just mentioned, then I wanted to be in the places where the other people like me were, and then they're giving you advice like, you need to start saving up so you can do your transition because it's going to be this much money, and try doing it this way, or go to this doctor, or these kinds of things. It's just so important having mentors around, don't you think?
Oh, so important. And it's also not back early 2000s is when it all happened. We still don't have Google. We still don't have all
Yeah.
this information online. So it's more of like word of mouth and um people that you really trust, and like they've had that experience to go to this doctor, so you have to go. Or you heard from someone like you shouldn't go to that doctor because someone died, and you hear all this.
Yeah.
So there was some confusion, there was some like like really, should I do it or not? But at the end I was really lucky to have good surgeons who I have found and did my transition, and I didn't really regret what I did. I think I really want to become who I am today. But then realizing, if this happened in this time now, I probably wouldn't do the complete transition, because that was one of the most, um how do you say, like, most difficult decisions I've had in my life.
Wow, yeah, I can imagine. And I was actually going to ask you that, like, how did it feel afterwards? And I don't mean physically. You went into very great detail on another friend's podcast, Tokyo Talks, about that. So if anybody's really interested in hearing the detail of that, go over to Tokyo Talks. Nick Pettos has a great conversation with you about that. But in your heart and mind,
Mhm.
how did it feel after you transitioned?
Oh, yeah, I really felt the freedom. I really felt the safety.
Mm,
I really felt that I can live the life that I want now. I don't have to be fearful about men, about people that if they find out about my gender identity. So before the transition, I've already thought about, I can live in a new life. I thought I can move to a different life, that I would not look back and and those things that happened to me in the past um will be coming back again. So I really thought that it's going to be a new life. And I realized that later on, after building a different persona of me being Tiffany, and having that not being authentic about myself also put me in so many consequences.
mm, mm.
Yeah. I've learned a lot through that process. But the feeling of that moment when I had that complete transition was also um, amazing and life changing for me.
Amazing and life-changing. I am curious. So you said there you don't regret it, but you might think twice. Was that just because of the physical aspect of it and the healing, or was what would make you think twice now?
I think it's because of I couldn't go back there, if
Ah,
if in case something happened, because I've heard stories that it didn't work, and then they have to suffer in this kind of condition.
mm,
Some people died because of that surgery, and I don't want to lose my life, obviously, right? Like because of surgery. And I was so lucky to have my sister. have backed me up because my mom didn't want to support me
Sure.
in doing my complete transition. So I'm really lucky to have my sister with me in Thailand, spending time with me for a month. Plus, it really made me a complete bond with her. That I love my sister so much that she was there for me. That I couldn't even think who else will be there for me.
Wow. There's such a strong theme of family running through this conversation, like a really strong theme of family here. It's and yeah, I can't say good or bad. It's just there. That's such a strong influence. Amazing. So, okay. So now I'm interested. So you then became this kind of one of the grand dames of Tokyo nightlife. So what was it like doing that? I mean, I've heard some of the stories you've told, but like the Tokyo underground, any big city has this mad underground like nightlife, but you were right in there with all of that, weren't you? Um, what? Tell me a bit about that. Tell me some interesting stories from that time.
So I during I think the hostess community of trans women too is very underground in Japan. It's not like really talk about. Only people that knows
Yeah,
that the scene will know. So I've had that experience when I started my transition working in show being as a showgirl in trans women community or clubs. And my other persona, which I also did after my complete surgery, I thought being a being a complete woman without telling everyone about my real gender identity because I already did everything.
yeah,
And so I did that image of persona of being Tiffany and being there enjoying the nightlife of Tokyo, going to all the parties.
yeah,
And that's how it all started for me to explore and being invited to so many VIP parties. And then I realized, why not make my own? And that's how the Tokyo Fashionista started. It's an event that I founded 10 years ago.
mhm,
And it was about fashion, it was about entertainment, it was about models, all this like beautiful people in Tokyo, the foreigners. It's also half and half, like foreign community and also the expat and also the Japanese community, all combined in one event. And they would we would just like have amazing fun night out of enjoying, like. And I also made it into team parties, like special occasions, for example, Halloween or countdown, New Year's countdown. Like I did the first foam parties in Japan.
no way.
Yeah, in Tokyo.
Yeah.
And um also a lot of team parties, and it was really so much fun. And at the same time, I didn't know that not being vulnerable about myself and hiding that part of me will put me in consequences. Like, for example, in my relationships, I I wasn't lucky enough to find the right guy for me, even though I thought that I'm completely, full on surgery, whatever. I thought like I'll be happy in relationship, but I wasn't. So I think not being vulnerable about myself really led me to so many things that also taught me a lot about life that I experienced. And yeah.
I mean that goes for anybody, but I'm just starting to realize what you're saying is that you when you transitioned that you kind of wanted to live just you just were a woman.
Hmm.
Now you are very, very open about being a transgender woman, right?
Hmm.
But back then you were just being a woman, and that you mentioned the word authentic, so that inauthenticity got you into some trouble. So now, I mean, you are so honest now. Like, I mean, just so when you say vulnerable, you are so vulnerable now. You are so straightforward and direct now. And I know I think this is part of your healing journey. And and getting those secrets out where people can see them, then nobody's got anything on you. But also, I suppose it helps to align your heart and your mind and and everything about a person. I think there's something, like, for me, I'm really trying to take this in now and think, where's my version of this as well, and maybe the listener's version of that as well, where just a little bit more authenticity in one's life could lead to more, if you like, healing, or more less trouble. Less trouble is a good way to put it. Is that what you're saying, Tiffany?
Yes, absolutely. And I think
Yeah.
it's very easy to ignore this voice inside us that is often more convenient to speak over it with justifications.
Yes.
It takes work to change, and it also takes courage.
Yeah.
But there's real bravery in honoring ourselves by changing the people, places, experiences that move us closer to the purest and most vibrant and most authentic versions of ourselves.
Love it, love it, love it, love it. And they're really kind of old-fashioned kind of qualities as well, like work, courage, bravery, honor. These are really kind of really, really old school kind themes, aren't they? I love it, love it. And that vibrancy, and more of us can be seen. Yeah, how beautiful. I'll be thinking about that. I really, really like that. Yeah, I'm just imagining you. I've just remembered, actually, I'd completely forgotten about this, but I used to have a client who worked at a club in Roppongi called, I think it was called Kagawa. Kagawa.
Kagawa. Oh yes, of course I know that. Like, I one of the top dancers is a very good friend of mine.
Right, yes. And that's a club with all kinds of people with all different kind of gender identities, and some of the
Mhm.
people there are like superstars, right?
Yes,
Like
yes.
of that world.
Hmm.
Because yeah, she also was she'd also done a full transition, and I didn't even ask her about it. She just told
Oh,
me.
was she Japanese or Filipina?
Japanese.
Oh, okay, yeah, there was some Japanese too.
She was from Hokkaido,
Mm,
yeah.
mm, mm,
I,
mm.
yeah, I can't remember her name now. I think Yuki, but I can't remember. And or something like that. But yeah, and again, that was the least. She wanted like business English help so that she could look after her clients better at Kagawa. So she was part
Mm.
of the show, and then I think people come down into the audience and serve and host and stuff like that. Amazing. So
Yes.
I'd completely forgotten about that. What a nice memory.
Hmm.
Yeah, and she went into great detail telling me about her transition in Thailand as well, but
Mm.
I didn't ask at all. She just started telling me. I was like,
Mm.
oh. Sounds really, really intense.
It's just really sad now though, because a lot of those places are shutting down, especially
Oh
with
no.
COVID. A lot of them suffered during COVID because they couldn't really
No.
do nightlife, right? So I am still in touch with people who still works in nightlife, and I'm hearing their stories that how they really wanted to try, because that's the only way that they think they can survive, right? By working in those type of places. While I think that they should definitely try many other things that they can do. And I've been there myself, and I thought that that's the only way. But I realized that if I do that for a long period of time, I don't think I'll be able to use my other skills that I have in me.
Right. Right. Well,
Mm.
that's really, really interesting. You should say that, because I hadn't really thought about that. That oftentimes nightlife jobs in nightlife, so whether it be hosting or waitering or bussing or the person who takes the rubbish out or anything like that, it's often people on the margins who get those jobs. And yeah, so like people who are already marginalized getting further marginalized because their jobs aren't there. But what you're saying is, and I think this is probably where your amazing coaching comes in as well, is to help people to understand that they're a whole person, not just that part of themselves. And I think
Mhm.
you're a brilliant, brilliant example of that. Of kind of, not that there's anything wrong with those jobs, because the other thing that makes me feel incredibly sad here, those clubs are closing down, but that's a whole piece of culture. That's a whole slice of any culture that could be dying with the death of those clubs. And I think that's a terrible, terrible shame. Not just culture, but people's talents, people's
Mm.
shows, and the people who enjoy that kind of stuff as well, because all kinds of people go to those places. It's like
Mm. Mm.
similar level to kind of geisha, I think, that kind of the skill and the level of service and the enjoyment that business people get from going to those places and enjoying that full spectrum of the many ways to lead a life, right? Which
And also,
is,
yeah, exactly. And also connection, like being in
yes,
those places, you connect with like-minded people who's very
yes.
open-minded. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
And also people who are different to you. So you know, oftentimes like CEOs and stuff like that would go to those kinds of clubs and entertain their guests there and stuff like that. And so you just don't, it seems a terrible shame to me that might die with the death of the clubs, but it always finds a way to come back up, right?
Mm,
Because
mm, mm.
creativity, talent, every different way to be a human being, that they don't go away. It doesn't go away. It still exists and lives within us all. So what do you, so then you decided about, so 10 years ago you were doing Tokyo Fashionista. I remember listening to you talking to Kike about hosting and how much you had to drink. Like he was telling me how much you had to drink. And I think both of you don't drink now. Is that right? You don't drink anymore. How long
Yeah.
ago did you stop drinking and what's been the impact of that?
I would not say I'm completely sober. I would
Yes.
have since last year, or yeah, since this last few years, I would have a glass of red wine. And
Mm-hmm.
that's it. I can definitely say I'm done and I'm not gonna drink more than that. And I quit. I started doing quitting alcohol 2017, 18,
2017. Yeah.
28, yeah, around that time, when I really thought about, what if I stop drinking alcohol and see what's gonna happen to me? And that's where it all came all together. Imagine like you're you're battling with all these problems, and then you can't run away anymore, because that's the way I escaped through through alcohol. And it was very challenging, but at the same time, after I overcome the being sober for several months, I've done it for, I think, a year, even a year. I think almost a year I did it, and I felt so much better. I felt so much lighter. I felt like I can face all the challenges that will come to me without even without even thinking that this is gonna be hard. That I think I'm already like trained enough to be stronger.
Wow. And was that the time when your kind of life started to transition into a new kind of, into a new you and becoming who you are today as well? So
Yes.
tell me what you're doing today then, because I mean, it's so interesting, isn't it? So you went from the factory to Philippines, to the factory, to the nightlife, to the Tokyo Fashionista. Then four or 5 years ago, you started to really change your life. And now your life is so different and interesting again, isn't it? So take us through this part of the journey.
So after my fashionista last before COVID, I was still working for a big place in Ginza called
Mm,
Plus Tokyo. It was a really beautiful place because they have the restaurant, the bars, the lounge, the rooftop, all at the same place. So that was really, like, for me, it was like a dream job to be working in that place, because I can bring my guests in a restaurant, I can bring my guests on a bar, I can bring my guests on a rooftop, I
mhm.
can do a fashion show in that place. So all, like, it was an amazing place, and I was working for them for a year, and that was before COVID. And when COVID hit last year, it was a big realization for me that, should I really continue doing what I'm doing for 10 years? Is it still my is it was it my is it my purpose to do events, to do this entertainment? I mean, I love entertaining people. I love doing all of it, like like organizing parties and making people happy.
Yeah.
It's part of me. I love doing it, but realizing that I can't do it anymore. I didn't think that during COVID was really, it made a negative impact on me. I thought that it really forced me to pivot to my real purpose, which made me realize that I need to advocate for my community. I need to start talking about my community, myself, to educate everyone about my community because I belong in that community. So that's how my podcast started last year, by being so vulnerable. It took me it took me probably weeks to finally touch the microphone, and because I haven't never been really vulnerable about myself, and telling everyone in my social media, and all of my friends about me. All they know is Tiffany, and they didn't really know who's behind Tiffany, who's the real Tiffany.
Yeah.
And when I share that story, it was liberating. I felt so healed, and I realized that, and I get so many messages from people that I didn't even expected, that they can resonate with my story. They're really proud of being for my vulnerability, and also being opening up and being honest. And I think a lot of people can't really be honest about themselves, so they really, they really praise me for doing what I'm doing. And also, um after letting them know that I'm going to serve for my community and I'm going to do something for my community, I'm starting to advocate for my community, is what really made them um support me. um and realizing that now I've been doing for a year, and I've had such an amazing connection with my community, which I never even thought about. Like, I'll meet people from I met I had him on my podcast, Daniel Franzese from the Mean Girls, which is which is everyone, all my friends was like, how did you get him?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. How did you get him?
But it was all through my my stories, that with the people that I, because I really want to talk about a lot LGBTQ in my podcast. So it led me to all these amazing people that I was even like in awe, like, like how I could how I became connected with all of them. So to my realization, I believe that I am it was really leading me to a path of my purpose, to really give out and share my voice and share my stories and let people know about me, because a lot of people still needs to hear um what a transgender
Yeah.
voice is like, because I don't think we have that enough voices. I mean,
No.
although now in America there are many um um coming out stories, and people who's really vulnerable about their stories, but in Japan, for example, there's not many representations. That's what it really made me realize, that I need to be there, so then I can encourage others to share their stories and be vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, because I'm thinking about, like, in the UK and in the USA, like, there's Peppermint, who's in the USA, who does a lot of lobbying and stuff like that. And she was on RuPaul's Drag Race as well. So she's got a really high profile. And then in the UK, there's a woman called Munro Bergdorf. And she does a lot of work as well there. I think she advises the government too. She's just won an award, actually. Yeah, she just won an award really recently. And so there is that kind of, and these are just people who are out in the public and doing things. And I mean, I do understand it's not easy. It's still not easy, right? There's still a marginalized identity. But what's the situation here in Japan then, Tiffany? Because maybe that's who you are. Because you are. This may be a personal question, and we can cut it out if you don't want to say it. But you have a Japanese passport now, right? Is that right?
I still don't have a Japanese passport.
Okay, beg your
I,
pardon.
yeah,
My mistake.
I would love to have a Japanese passport,
Yes.
because in the Philippines we can change our gender. We don't have that yeah, we don't have
Can't
that.
change your gender marker.
Yeah,
Right.
we don't have, because I think also because of
Religious stuff. Yeah.
religious stuff, the government is connected with being Catholic and all that. And the only way that I can change my gender mark on my passport is if I became a Japanese citizen.
I see.
So I
I
really want
see.
to do that too. Just I want to do that, not to um get rid of my being Filipino. I love my country. I
Yes.
love my country, Philippines. I love being Filipino. But if that's the only way to make myself more safe, because in other countries, for example, in Dubai, I've had the opportunity to go to Dubai, and I didn't know that we're not allowed to in Dubai if my gender mark is male. And my gender mark was male, and I was there, and I realized that after when I came back to Japan, and then they were telling me like, how can you go there? And it's not like, if your gender mark is male, they would have, they would have put you in jail
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's illegal.
Wow. This is I'm so glad I asked that question, because these are things I don't know, right? I didn't
Mhm.
know that. For some reason, I thought you had a Japanese passport, but I mean, it doesn't matter because we're both, long-term residents here, and this is our home. So, I can see you being this voice. So there's something interesting. So I've got a question here, because in Japan, there are people who dress in different gender identities all the time, right? So on TV, there's what's their name now? The big fat person. What's their name?
Matsuko-san,
Okay, yeah, and
the comedian, right?
yeah, exactly. And so there's
Matsuko-san,
a
yeah.
lot of um people who dress different gender to what they were born, and also and of course there's Takarazuka as well. So it's and kabuki, like all of this, it's all part embedded in the culture here. However, you don't really hear what you're talking about, the transgender voice of the people just in the street. It's like those are the tarento. That's what happens in the acting community. But the voice that you're bringing to the table is a different voice. Is that right?
Absolutely right. The
Okay.
representation in Japan is still less. Like you would see a lot of they call it talento.
Tarento,
Yeah,
yes.
you could call it talento. Like they're in variety, like variety, ne? Variety. We
Yeah.
call it variety in shows that you would see Haruna Ai representing. Like, but she wouldn't be recognized as transgender. They would call her okama
Yeah.
or a gay, right? And they're all like comedians, and you wouldn't see. I think now there's a few who is transgender, um doing modeling and all that, but not in acting. And that's the reason why I also did acting lessons this past few years, because I think um being a representation in the film industry is also important. And we don't have that representation in Japan yet. And I we need those people. We need a representation, so then all this future LGBTQ can be how do you say it, like can see that, oh, there's someone in the film industry, I can be like them. you
Hmm.
know if we don't have that representation, I don't think they'll be able to see that they have the future to be open, to be vulnerable,
Yeah.
to share their stories, to be there, and be like, I am here, I'm a transgender, I'm here, I'm queer, or whatever. But now, still in Japan, they prioritize their careers, they prioritize their relationship with their families and friends. I understand it, but they don't have that freedom of being themselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's a big thing, that once you release that, you'll be able to discover more about yourself.
Mm. Freedom to be ourselves. Gorgeous,
Mhm.
gorgeous, gorgeous. And again, you're talking about this representation and about kind of having mentors, because mentors aren't only person to person, they're also everywhere. Like, it's a book, it's a person in the media, it's a magazine article you read. So it's so important to have access to this. What would be your highest hope then, as this kind of leader and this advocate and this voice and this activist? What would be your highest hope for the people in your community?
My highest hope for my community is that one day we will not even talk about transgender. We will not
Yeah,
talk about queer. We will not talk about,
yeah.
like the different umbrellas of LGBTQ. Like, I want to experience this in my life, during this my life, that um we are just like a part of the community, a part of the world that is just a normal human being.
Yeah.
Like we exist too. We're here. We're a part of it. We're you and I are the same. You
Yep.
know, we're not different. So that's my hope that one day it will be just like a normal thing that we exist.
I love that so much. And that's the basic theme of my whole business, is there are many ways to lead a life, and that's it. It's just like that would be my hope as well. So speaking of which, then tell us what you're doing now. Then what do you do now? So you tell us about your board of directors and what else you're doing, and your coaching and your retreats and all these kinds of things. So tell us what you're doing now.
Oh, thank you so much for asking that, Sarah. So after I released my podcast last year, which turned 1 year already, I I started doing my coaching for the LGBT, not just for the LGBTQ, but also for people that really needs this the guideline or needs motivation in their lives. And I also started hosting retreats, which is so much fun, like because I am really good at like organizing. That's what I've been doing events for Tokyo Fashionista. And I think I it's for me it was easy to organize this retreats because I already had that background. I just have to gather all these like healers and coaches and programs. You know, all of this is very easy for me.
Yeah.
It's just it was really quite the only thing was challenging was the COVID, because it's not easy to gather people in one place. That was the only part that was challenging, but organizing the wellness retreats was really fun, and I think it was really amazing. Sorry, I interrupted you. You wanted to say something?
No, I didn't.
Okay.
No, I didn't say anything. I'm just
Okay.
scratching my head and
Yeah, so I love hosting wellness retreats, and hopefully next year I'll be able to do that more. And then um I was lucky to be invited to be one of the board of directors for Few Japan, which you were also my senpai, being a part of the community before. And um it was really, I think, being a transgender and being invited to a women community is so, I feel so honored, and I feel it was an amazing feeling that to be a part of it and be a represent for my community, and to have that space and be welcomed by this powerful women. I i am just grateful, and I am really looking forward to connecting with all this amazing women in the community. So that's another thing that I've been doing. And also, um, what else I've been doing? I also started my YouTube channel uh, just last month, and it's I wanted to make it more connected to my podcast, but not like in a long version, because I don't think people will watch on YouTube for an hour, like the conversation, for example, that we're having, right? So for me, I wanted to make a visual content on YouTube, um, focusing on focusing about Japan, the culture about Japan, because how I love this country, and also stories from people that who lives here, and um, educating people about LGBTQ community. So that's what I've been busy lately, and I think I'm just looking forward for next year, because I think next year will be I'll be getting more amazing um opportunities to probably do films, or like with my acting, and also having speaking gigs. So
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And you're friends with Chuck, aren't you? Chuck Johnson.
Yes,
Yeah,
yes, yes.
he was. So I hope to see one of his films,
Mhm.
one of his Quiet Flame productions, because he's a mate of mine as well, and he was on this podcast. It was really fantastic conversation, so interesting. He's so interesting.
He's an
Uh,
amazing person,
he's an amazing person.
and he was the one who convinced me to do acting skill, my
Did
acting.
he?
Mhm.
Did he? Yeah, yeah. So that I would love to see you in one of his like action movies as well. That would be amazing. And I want to say this as well, Tiffany. You said it was an honor to be invited into the women's group. The honor is all ours. It's our honor to have you in our group, not least because you're one of the greatest organizers of events, and so that's just simply your talent and your skill that you're bringing to the table. But seriously, the honor is all ours. It's all ours. I feel very honored to be in a time and a place where you are part of the community and you're representing for us. I really appreciate that, so thank you. Actually, yeah.
Thank you. No, I love View Japan, and I remember the first time I DJ'd for for the
Yes.
future, and you were there too.
Yeah.
It was, the energy from that community. I was just like, it was mind blowing. I was just like, what is this community? Why I didn't find out about this community?
Yeah.
And then when Jackie started talking to me about Jackie is the current president of View Japan, and when she was starting to talk to me about this community, and she was like, you should be a part of this community, and like we're actually looking for co-directors to be on board, and maybe we can have you. And I couldn't say no. Of course I would say
Yeah.
yes. And the energy that night, when I DJ'd, I will never forget it. That's why I want to, when we do meetings again in person or events in person, I can't wait for that moment to have, like, I would blast off like 80s music, and we can
Yeah.
all have fun.
Well, this seems like a great time to start to close out. So where do you where can people find you? We'll link to all this below, but where's the best place for people to find you, Tiffany?
Thank you so much for asking that, Sarah. They can find me, Tiffany Rossdale. I have my LinkedIn, all my social media like accounts like Facebook, Instagram. I also have my official website, tiffanyrossdale.com, where they
Mm-hmm.
can learn about my coaching and programs, and also my retreats. And then my podcast, Breakfast with Tiffany Show. Uh, it's available on any podcast platforms, and also my Breakfast with Tiffany Show on YouTube, also available. And yeah, I think that's all.
Gorgeous. Yeah, go and listen to a podcast. It's really fascinating. Great. So I'm going to ask my final question now. There are many ways to lead a life. Tiffany, what does that mean to you?
Ooh, what a beautiful question. Life for me has been interesting. It really taught me so much, and and I think all the things that happened in my past, I would never regret it. I would never say that I regret, or I didn't like, or I hated it. I think all what happened in my past led me to who I am today, and who I am becoming, because there's we don't know how long life will be. Life can be in 200 years or 300 years in our age, and that's possible. And
Oh,
sorry,
it's
sorry,
okay.
sorry. Someone just randomly called me. I'm sorry about that. So,
Okay.
um, and I would say that just enjoy every moment of it, and be in present moment, and not think about the future,
Yeah.
is one of the important um, things that I've learned
Yeah.
throughout my journey.
Amazing. Tiffany, thank you. It's been such a pleasure to talk to you today and hear about this way to lead a life. It's been really, really interesting listening to you. And, as I said, like, I'm being so frank about being transgender, but for me, that's not the most interesting thing about you. It's just that you're such an incredible person and such a professional. Always positive, always optimistic, but also just very, very honest, and not trying to sugarcoat things or be fake positive or toxic positivity or anything like that. And just watching you kind of over the last few years moving into this new space where you're taking this amazing leadership role in, you say, your community, but not only the LGBTQ plus community, but also the community that I'm part of as well, which is the community of Japan, and the community of just being people in the world, and finding your place like that. And you are such a radiant, radiant example for anybody who comes your way of how to overcome diversity and how to tell adversity, how to overcome adversity and how to flourish and bloom and how to just lead a life and take everything that's happened and make it and give it back, but also make it be part of you and just enjoy yourself. I mean, we just enjoy our lives, don't we? So very much. It's so rich and lovely. So I'm so happy, and I hope that the listeners have something to take away. Please do comment or go and give Tiffany a follow in any of her places, especially a podcast and a YouTube channel. Let's give that a bit of love. Tiffany, thank you so much.
Sarah, I just would like to say that um, thank you for using your platform, for using your voice to making all this, and I'm really grateful that you invited me over, and I love being here. I think I really feel you really every time I watch your podcast, you really know how to make people really feel comfortable and make it a safe space. So whenever you need whenever you need me or a guest again, like I'm here, like let me know.
Would
I'll be
love
more than
that.
happy
Let's
to
do
be.
a follow-up. Let's do a follow-up sometime because I do have a follow-up series. So maybe in a year's time, let's see what's happening and we'll find out what the fuck happened next for you because that's my other theme. Thanks so much, Tiffany. Thank you, everybody, for listening. I'm Sarah Faruya from Sarah Faruya Coaching. This is the Legends podcast. I believe there are many ways to lead a life, and everybody has stories, and I want to tell them. And thanks again to beautiful, wonderful Tiffany for sharing her stories with us today.